how do we put the artist and maker first in the experience? And that was something that we didn't know, right? Other bigger retailers, you dictate the terms, you do things that benefit you first and the supplier or the maker second. We put the maker first. You didn't know, we didn't know. We didn't know that's how we were not supposed to. We were supposed to do business. But it was really refreshing for those artists and makers. A lot of them would try to work with Hallmark, a big corporate store that has their kind of checklist to become a supplier. Their vendor application packet is daunting, or they would try to get into a Target or a different big box store and just doors closed left and right. And so we really wanted to put the artist and maker first in what we did, and that was kind of our first real differentiator, I think, in what we were doing with retail, not just local goods retail, but retail in general.
In a corporate world where all employees have great leaders with no egos that create fun cultures where people can do their best work, the employees and companies thrive while doing great things for the customers, themselves, and each other.
Well, we know that rarely happens. I'm Jeff Palacio. I have been a leader for over 40 years for every t-shirt size company, from small 16 employees to extra large over 1 million. Please join me while I interview outstanding leaders that will share stories of great leadership and not so great. It will help you become a better leader while poking fun at all the crazy shit that happens in corporate America.
Hi, I'm Joe Deshawn, and welcome to the Corporate Couch with Jeff Palacio. Today's episode is brought to you by Palacio and Partners, providing turnkey podcast creation, hosting, production, promotion, and related creative resources for you and your business. Today, Jeff is interviewing Keith Bradley. Keith is the founder and co-owner of Made in KC. For the past 10 years, Keith and his business partners have been active in growing and celebrating Kansas City's great artisan and maker community by giving them one of the most robust platforms for selling local goods in the country. He is a Kansas City Tomorrow alum and currently serves on the board of both Jackson County CASA and Habitat for Humanity. You can learn more about Keith at madeinkc.co. Let's listen as Jeff talks to Keith.
Keith, welcome to the Corporate Couch this morning.
Thanks for having me, Jeff. Good to be here.
Although we didn't formally meet, we were both at the Kansas City B2B networking event in March. I was a guest attendee, and you were the keynote speaker. So I'll thank Gentry Ferguson and Sue Cantrell that we're now sitting here, and also Michael Amarino, who I sent him because I had to leave after you spoke and couldn't stay at the event, and so I sent him as my messenger to snag you on the Corporate Couch today. So yeah, very excited to talk to you. As we were talking offline before I press record, I've been to at least several of the locations, Plaza, and I live close to Lenexa City Center, so I've been there many times for networking coffees, and my wife and I have actually shopped there. Well, mainly my wife, and I follow her around the store. So
That's wonderful. Thanks for your support. That B2B event was super fun. You've probably gone to a ton of those. Maybe you've spoken at some, and it's about networking, and you expect to meet some people, hand out some business cards. That night in particular, so many people I talked to, they followed up right away. I've gotten coffees with a handful of them afterwards. It was probably the most, I would say, fruitful networking event that I've attended and or spoken at. It was a great night.
And I forget what they're called, a tagline. It's like give to grow, or so. It's basically helping others. Is the spirit of the event. And yeah, and sure, you get some people there because he has a lot of people. Some people are they're shaking your hand, giving you a business card, giving you their whole portfolio of what they can sell you. There's a few of those, but for the most part, it's a very generous group of people that want to help each other and help the speaker and things like that. So it's a really nice event. Well, we'll be publishing here. We're talking in April of 2026. Their 5-year anniversary will be in May next month. This will this episode will probably be published in June. So hopefully we'll see each other at the May 5-year anniversary event.
Sounds good.
Yeah. Well, Keith, let's start with a fun question. Even people that know you fairly well, what one thing would surprise them about you?
I think a lot of people, particularly in the business community, who meet either me or my two partners for the first time, and they know about Made in KC, they've shopped in our stores like you have. It's always very surprising when they find out that this was the first business we ever started and ran, and that we kind of stumbled into entrepreneurship, and Made in KC was our first business. And it kind of still surprises me today. I got my start in the nonprofit world in my career, and being in business is a wild turn that has really suited me and my partner as well. But it was our first crack at it.
I did read something about the combined experience of you and your two partners in like the retail space. Yeah. Why don't you just say that now? I was going to get into it later, but this is a perfect time.
It's great. Yeah, we're a retail experience for shopping and supporting local with multiple locations. But prior to starting Made in KC, we had a combined retail experience among the three of us of one college winter break at Williams Sonoma during the holiday season, and one summer working, waiting tables at a restaurant between the three of us. So maybe a total of 6 or 7 weeks in the customer service industry.
Yeah, I love that. So where did you grow up?
I actually grew up. I'm not a Kansas City native. That's another thing that probably surprises people when they meet me. I was born and raised in Southern California, just about 30 minutes east of LA, and didn't move to the Midwest till I was 16 years old. I got my roots in Southern California, but came to the Midwest middle of high school.
Oh, nice. Yeah. So what are you, a surfer? A little surfer dude out there? Or no?
Like every kid going to Southern California thinks they're a surfer, dresses like one, but is not. I was definitely not. I did get my first skateboard though when I was 2. Never got really great at it, but definitely part of that culture in terms of apparel and whatnot.
Yeah. Do you still wear Vans?
Still, my kids do now. My kids wear Vans. Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah. But I had always had a Midwest kind of a heart in me, and moving to the Midwest, I love Southern California. Go back there as often as I can, but the Midwest really suits me, particularly Kansas City. Very very close knit community, very very sociable. I love Midwestern values and work ethic, and felt like home ever since I came here.
Yeah. So growing up, what was fun for you? What you love doing?
Oh man, I was very much into sports. Basketball was my primary sport. We had a really tight knit neighborhood cul-de-sac that we lived on, where we would do video game tournaments, ping pong tournaments in the summer. Everyone would open up their garages and do that. But sports was my main vehicle for entertainment as a kid.
And what brought your family to Kansas City?
Take a quick step back. When my parents got divorced when I was younger, and my mom was actually raised here in Missouri, in Columbia, Missouri, and so she, when she was looking for a fresh start following the divorce, she wanted to move back close to her parents, and so they helped us relocate to the Midwest. They actually bought us a historic pre-Civil War era home in a small town called Boonville, Missouri, just outside Columbia. So it was kind of it's almost one of those sitcom or romantic comedy stories, like, single lady leaves the big city, goes to a small town with her kids to get a fresh start. And we lived in this 3-story brick pre-Civil War home in a small picturesque Missouri town for a couple of years. And then after that, I went to Truman State University up in Kirksville, Missouri, where I got my undergrad education. That's where I met my wife, who was from Kansas City, as a lot of folks who go to Truman State are from Kansas City, and that's ultimately how I ended up in Kansas City.
When you were growing up, I mean, did you have aspirations to play college basketball, NBA, co-found a retail
I was
conglomerate?
Yeah. Up until, from age probably 5 until about, I think I held on to about age 15, 16. I was going to be a Los Angeles Laker for sure. Went to basketball camps in the summertime, all that stuff. That was, literally the only focus. It was classic tales of mom has to call you in for dinner, shooting free throws at the driveway. I had to make 10 in a row before I could go to bed at night, all that sort of stuff. So that was my passion. And what happened to me was when I was most of my life pretty tall, but not always the tallest kid in the basketball court. Great shooter, ball handler. And then when I moved to a small town, I didn't really have to even try out the basketball team. They needed another player on the basketball team. I was the tallest kid on the court for the first time in my life, and had to adapt playing a different position. Didn't go well for me my last year. So college and pro aspirations quickly slipped away. Late high school and early college, I really found a joy in connecting to different groups of people. And I think that's one of my strengths. One of the really interesting things about my life experience in high school, when we moved from Southern California to Boonville, Missouri, I grew up in a very diverse community in Southern California. My neighbors were from India, neighbors across the street, African American, to my other side were from Mexico. Literally, triangle around me, 3 different cultures, 3 different people. Very diverse community, not surprising for Southern California. When I moved away to the Midwest, predominantly white town, and there was maybe a handful of African American people in the community. That was about it. No diversity. And when I came to high school for the first time, again, kind of like a weird sitcom Hollywood movie, there was the classic lunchroom experience. And I noticed really quickly, because I was part of the sports community as well, like all the black kids sat at one table and by themselves, and everyone else was around them. I was like, that did not feel right to me. So as a way to make new friends, as a way to get acquainted with my new high school, I made a commitment to sit at every different lunch table. There was 20 of them at one different for a week for my whole first time when I moved there. That's social suicide when you're in high school, going from the jock table, literally the stereotype, right. The jock table, the nerd table, the cheerleading table, the right. Black kid table, the artsy kid table, the theater kid table. I spent a week at each of those kids' tables just learning to get to know them. They thought I was the weird one, but I really found joy in connecting with different people in a common place, and that's a lot of what business is. You're bringing lots of different people from diverse backgrounds for one common experience, and I really think that experience kind of put me on a different trajectory of, all right, I love people, I love being around people.
Yeah, so interesting. It's so funny you talk about your. I had athletic dreams growing up too, very delusional. But I remember thinking I was going to play on the U.S. Olympic team.
Oh yeah.
And the problem in high school, I was a great outside shooter, but we played all our games indoors, so that that was the problem there. But and I've actually been to Boonville, so I know exactly. I actually biked through Boonville from Kansas City one time. So it's definitely middle rural-ish America for sure.
For sure.
Yeah. It's so interesting. So how did I stayed at the same high school, a lot of kids I went to high school with, I went to elementary, we call it middle school through high school. I would be terrified. I knew most of the people, but where did you think you got that, kind of seeing the bigger picture? And, I would consider myself, even back then, a nice person, but I would probably... I'd be probably terrified because of the kind of social stigma. And I felt I didn't fit in any of the groups. It was the jocks, the kind of brainiacs, intellectuals, and, the pot smokers, basically, was my 3 groups. And, I was good at school. I was good at sports, but I felt I didn't fit in any of the 3 groups, honestly. Yeah. But talk about that.
It's not dissimilar. Good at sports, good student, and so never felt pigeonholed to one sort of group and wanted to meet other folks. But really, I got that from my mom. She actually works for us at Made in KC. She's often referred to as our best sales associate. She is never met a stranger. She's very outgoing, very warm, very welcoming. And during that move, when I witnessed with her, because I helped her move, moving from Southern California to the Midwest and getting a fresh start, being able to witness in real time and understand her courage and bravery to do that, to start life over she was about my age at the time, so in her early 40s, doing that. I remember one night The night before we moved, I said, we're starting this new life, and I have an older brother. He was staying back in California because he just started college, and we toured University of Missouri with him, but didn't work out. And so he stayed back home, and I said, I'm the oldest. I'm the man of the house now, kind of stereotypically about it. And I really felt ownership of wanting to make the most of this opportunity. And part of that for me was not being miserable in it and trying to make the most of it for myself so I can support my mom and my younger brother at the time. But really witnessing her, and even day to day, the amount, every time she comes home from work, she is constantly telling about somebody new she met at Made in KC, a great conversation she had, somebody who visited us from out of town, somebody who does this really unique job in Kansas City. She told me just last night she met a ESPN reporter who covers the Chiefs who just walked in and needed a gift. Said, my mom's like, well, what do you do for a living? And she said, I'm a reporter for the Chiefs. I love my job. And just told me on and on about this. So never met a stranger. And so really learned it from my mom. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah, but it's very interesting. I mean, you were 16, your parents divorced, you move, from, 30 miles, east of LA to Boonville, Missouri. I mean, how else did the divorce impact? I mean, you were very mature, obviously. I mean, to say, hey, I'm going to help my mom. I'm the dominant male figure to help. How else did the divorce affect you even today?
Like I said, go back as often as possible, visit my dad, and got a great relationship with my dad and stepmom. And at the time, my dad was forming a new family with someone else. And honestly, I think I viewed the opportunity, and I even am doing this. I'll give you an example of how I'm still living this out in my life today of, okay, this is hard. This is not ideal. But guess what? My family actually just got bigger. Like I said, I love people. Now there's more people in my life. I have a stepmom and stepsisters. That's a benefit. Like, this is bad that happened and it's not ideal, but hey, I've got more people now in my life who I can love and support, who they can love and support me. Kind of flipped it on its head. This is an adventure. This is something new and different. I never viewed myself as one of those, as a kid with divorced parents, as a kid that's different or suffering because of the divorce, but viewed it as this is an opportunity to welcome more people into my life. Even as a young kid, I had that view. And to learn something. So this past week, ever since Saturday night, we've had some electrical issues at our house. Our panel needs to be upgraded and just not safe. So we've had the power off since Saturday. It's Tuesday now. Not ideal, not fun. Got a lot of accommodations. I've got 4 kids, and I told my kids, this is what we're doing. This is an adventure. We're going to get stronger. We're going to get smarter. We're going to build some resiliency. We're going to have fun, even though we can't plug in. We can't turn on TVs. Can't plug in our phone. The divorce, the move has really helped me adapt that mindset. And one of the things we often talk about with here at Made in KC with my business partners is probably one of the more under recognized. When you hear about businesses or success stories, or you look at where a business is at and how it got there, one of the things that often gets missed is the ability to constantly adapt to change is probably one of the more successful things needed for an entrepreneur, a business owner, a leader of any sort. Is things are going to change. How fast can you adapt? How much can you even enjoy the transition and make the most of it, versus fighting and resisting the world around you? I think that ultimately, that's a characteristic that developed through that time period on into today. Any business owner you've interviewed, change is inevitable. Their business started in one way and it ended up somewhere where they didn't envision first, and the ability to adapt is so important.
It's amazing. I'm a big Ryan Holiday fan, and Tim Ferriss. They talk a lot. They do a lot about stoicism. Ryan Holiday's book, The Obstacle is the Way, meaning like not only do you accept the obstacle for what it is and be okay with it, you look at it as an opportunity to improve, or see it as a benefit, not the obstacle, right? So. Right. And a lot of NFL teams have adopted that philosophy. The Patriots had it when Brady went down, and Matt Castle came in. They were 11-5. They changed. They adapted. They were Tom Brady's not going to play this year. Tore his ACL.
Right.
The Chiefs did that too, by the way.
Yeah. They didn't quite adapt.
Right. But and I just literally started reading a day ago Adam Grant's Think Again, meaning, yes, it's good to have principles and, and be stable in your thinking and all that, but the ability to adapt and be flexible is, critical to, making better decisions.
Yeah.
And things like that. So amazing. So you're obviously a very mature 18-year-old. You picked Truman State. You can talk about why Truman State, and I'm curious about your major. And did you have the same major all 4 years?
Oh man, maybe not as mature. Pick Truman State for a girl.
A somewhat common theme on the corporate couch. I mean, didn't really at that time know exactly what I wanted to be or do when I quote unquote grew up, but I had a lot of friends who went up there, great experience at Truman State, and so followed my friends up there. Was an English major, not anything super. Not necessarily proud of or interested in. I do love reading. It's very, but the clock was ticking on, when to declare a major. So I had most of those credits lined up there. At the time, I was thinking maybe I was going to go into education, maybe teaching. My older brother is a teacher. My father's a teacher. Aunt and uncle's teachers. There's a good lineage of education that I saw growing up. My dad is the same teacher in the same classroom for 35 years. Real impressive dedication to one location, one group of students, and saw a lot of that. So that's kind of where I was going with the English major a little bit, but ultimately that led me to where we are today. But English major and there you go.
Harvard of the Midwest, Truman State, just to get a good, well-rounded education.
All right. So I always love to hear. I think there's things more terrifying, but it's very anxiety ridden when you graduate college, and it's they don't teach how to get a job, and it's like, okay, yes. Getting that first job. So talk about that experience. What was your first job, and how'd you get it?
Yeah, especially at a liberal arts school, right. As Truman was. So a couple things on that kind of first job career. My first kind of job came in high school in Boonville. I got a job at a small town bank there. And would go when I wasn't in basketball season. I'd go after school from about 3 o'clock to 5 or 5:30 when the bank closed. And I was a bank teller for 2 years, and really actually liked that experience. You get to interact with people. You learn a lot about money. You also learn about how money affects people, right? So that's you're seeing them cash checks. You're seeing them withdraw money. You're seeing them stressed out. You're seeing all that stuff through the drive-through window, through the walk-up window. And then when I went off to college at Truman State, the branch that I worked at, they actually expanded to Kirksville, Missouri. And so one day my former manager called me up and said, "Hey, we're actually getting ready to open a branch in Kirksville. Would you be interested in joining us? We've got a president, we've got a vice president," and then they hired me as their third hire at this branch. So I got to train as a college kid, got to train all the new tellers. Got to do essentially everything but give out loans at this bank. And so I really got some good small business experience, some good personal experience, professional experience in the banking world. And that was about the extent of my banking career. But that was my first job. And then out of school, my first real job out of school was I worked at homeless shelters. So while I was, when I came to Kansas City, my first job was at a homeless shelter, and not knowing what I was doing, wanted to help people, wanted to be around people. That was my vehicle to get to Kansas City. And so I worked at a homeless shelter, running after school programs for youth. So kids who were still homeless, they had to go to school, they'd come back, we'd do after school care for them. Wow. While their parents were getting their life together, figuring things out, working on a job program or whatnot. So that was my first Kansas City job.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what was the impetus to go from Truman State and work in Kansas City just because it was the closest metro area, or?
Yeah, it was again a girl. So Open Truman State is where I met my wife, and we started becoming friends then. And she was from Prairie Village, from Kansas City, and so she moved back to there after her time at Truman State, and so I followed her here, and we got married shortly after, which is all part of the Made in KC story, because her brother ultimately became my business partner at Made in KC. So there was the family tie there, but it was again, I'm all about people and relationships, and I'll figure out the details later. So it was really, hey, if this is going to work with my future wife, I've got to move here and figure it out to see if it would work. And so far it's worked.
Are you drowning in boring corporate communications? Palacio and Partners is here to rescue you. We transform internal podcasts from snooze fest to must-listen content that actually connects your team and strengthens your culture. Imagine podcast episodes that make your employees laugh while staying informed. Our founder, Jeff Palacio, doesn't just create podcasts, he creates conversations that break through the noise. Whether you're a growing startup or a massive corporation, we turn your company's story into audio gold. Leadership becomes human. Remote teams feel connected. Your message cuts through the clutter. Palacio and Partners, where corporate communications gets a fun makeover. Let's make your podcast work harder than your email inbox ever could. Jeff is happy to share his insights on podcasting with you. You can contact him via LinkedIn or schedule a Zoom call via the link in the episode description.
Talk about kind of your journey prior to co-founding Made in KC in 2015. Kind of what were your highlights, your learnings, if you can kind of summarize that.
So a couple of things were going on in my life, and also in my two business partners who weren't my business partners at the time, lives. Pretty exciting stuff. So like I said, I was working at homeless shelter and really liked working in nonprofits. And my thought was, okay, they don't pay very well, but there's higher up positions, there's executive level positions that do pay decently. I think this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to make a career out of becoming a nonprofit executive, a COO or CEO of some sort. So I started going to school at UMKC for a master's in public administration program through the Block School. So I started doing that, walking down that path. Well, at the same time, my brother-in-law was an accountant by trade. He also went to Truman State University, got his master's of accountancy, and he was working at a large accounting firm here in town at the time called BKD. I think they've changed their name since, but he got hired on at BKD right out of his master's program, and was just grinding away as a CPA for a couple of years, and didn't like his life, as young CPAs often struggle with around this time of the year. Well, not in June with this broadcast. They're happy in June, but they're grinding away from January to April. And then our third business partner, Tyler, he and Thomas were friends since high school. They went to high school together over at Shawnee Mission East, and always had this dream to someday start a business together. Tyler had been in New York City after he left college. He went to KU, went to New York City to kind of spread his wings and get out of the Kansas City Lawrence bubble, so to speak. And he was learning a lot working for a small family office in New York City. And so prior to 2015, things started happening where Tyler had come back from New York, got reconnected with Thomas. Thomas and I are part of a very close-knit family now. We get together once a week for family dinners. We're laughing. We're always sharing ideas of what it would be like to start a business, to get out of the CPA world for him. And so from there, conversations kind of evolved where, similar to my experience when I moved high schools, Tyler, when he came back from New York City, he said, I want to be a part of a different crowd than I ran with when I lived here. And that crowd for him ultimately was Kansas City artisan makers. These artisans who were not part of any crowd that he ran with before. He wanted to meet a different community, and that was the art world. So he started meeting with different artists, started hanging out with them, going to their shows, going to their different pop-up events, art shows, and started talking with them about the struggles they had in their business just out of curiosity. And those conversations and Thomas's dissatisfaction of being a CPA, and my program as a Master's of Public Administration, which is almost identical to an MBA in many ways, minus a few courses, was the kind of the beginning first fruits of where Made in KC was about to start in the spring of 2015.
Yeah, that's great. So basically over family dinners and friends conversations, kind of the embryo of Made in KC started.
Yeah. And it came to a point where, like, oh, if we're going to do this, let's go ahead and let's do this.
Yeah, so you had, I forget, between the three of you about a week and a half of retail restaurant experience. Was there any, like, was it just because you didn't know what you didn't know, so you had no fear, or like, we're just going to do this and it doesn't matter that we don't know anything really about retail?
I think that's exactly right. So there was a combination of, we want to do something, right? We want to do something. So Thomas was a CPA, and he was able to actually transition out of BKD, and he became an accountant for commercial real estate broker, so the Merrill company. So he was working for Fred Merrill. They have the Prairie Fire developments out there. They had a small unleasable, at that time it seemed unleasable space, and that became our first storefront. It was a 300 square foot vestibule that you walk into and go upstairs to a larger door that wasn't getting used. So he approached his boss, said, hey, we've got this idea for a pop-up of all local folks, 15 artists at the time. Tyler had been talking to a bunch of them and said they were struggling to get their local goods in other stores. So the local boutique wouldn't want to pick them up because no one knew about this person's jewelry. The jewelry maker was tired of going to show after show after show to sell their stuff, and prayed it didn't rain that night, prayed that the weather was just right, that people showed up, prayed that people were in the mood to shop. A lot of obstacles to try to sell their goods. And so that was the really beginning of the idea of Made in KC. What if we brought all these artists together? What if we celebrated the fact that they were local rather than made that their differentiator? What if we celebrated them? What if we actually bought all the product up front wholesale from them? So whether they sold one thing or 100 things, it didn't matter. They already got paid for that. They already had a win. They already had success. And what if we just marketed the heck out of it and made this real great celebration of local goods? And that was the first weekend in March of 2015 for the Made in KC. At the time, it was just a pop-up store.
Yeah, I remember that, and I was actually there. We wwere talking before I pressed record, but it was like above the B. Was it the B or something?
Below the threshing, the threshing B was the name of the larger store above us, and we were the entryway.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep, that's right.
Yeah, that's right.
And a lot of people in Kansas City still remember that first store, that first experience, which is so special to us and the artists that we work with.
I remember we bought some koozies, KC koozies, like for bottles of beer or whatever. Yeah. That was, wow.
And that was the first iteration of what has become, 15 plus stores, a store in the Kansas City airport. We're now in our 11th year of business. Was how do we put the artist and maker first in the experience? And that was something that we didn't know, right? Other bigger retailers, you kind of you dictate the terms, you do things that benefit you first, and the supplier or the maker second. We put the maker first, and that was the kind of, to your point. Well, you didn't know. We didn't know that's how we were not supposed to. We were supposed to do business.
Right.
But it was really refreshing for those artists and makers. A lot of them would try to work with Hallmark, a big corporate store that has their kind of checklist to become a supplier. Their vendor application packet is daunting, or they would try to get into a Target or a different big box store, and just doors closed left and right. And so we really wanted to put the artist and maker first in what we did, and that was kind of our first real differentiator, I think, in what we were doing with retail, not just local goods retail, but retail in general.
Yeah, so many things what you just said. One, I interviewed on the podcast 2 of the 3 co-founders of Robach, the kind of premium athleisure brand. They're doing very well, but they same thing. 3 co-founders. They had no clue no retail experience, basically. One was did some retail consulting, but they basically they really thought their ignorance was their superpower.
Yeah.
Honestly, because they didn't know what they didn't know, and
Yeah.
they built a great business model. And or the question I would have though, like, okay, you're coming from the not-for-profit world, and Thomas is coming, CPA background at BKD, big accounting, consulting, managed services company, and then Merrill, the commercial real estate, and Tyler has this different background. But what were like the holy shit moments in the beginning? Like, oh my God, this happens, or well, I need to do this, or what was that like?
Early on, we were doing everything ourselves, right? We were a delivery driver, we were cutting checks, we were figuring out how to do payroll. I literally checked out from the Kansas City Public Library, a book called QuickBooks for Dummies.
I love it.
I remember that memory distinctly of like, okay, let's set up QuickBooks. The first time, so very quickly into our journey with Made in KC, we started on the Kansas side of the state line, but within 2 or 3 months of opening that first pop-up store, we were getting calls from developers, commercial real estate brokers all across the metro. And so our next store that we opened was up North River in the Briarcliff Shopping Center. We wanted to stretch out a little bit and be in places that someone up north is not going to drive 135th and Knoll to check out this new Made in KC store. So we wanted to be where the people were. How do we get licensed to do business in another state? Let's look that up. We just can't open, learning all that stuff. That's where a little bit of the MPA background came from, a little bit of all that sort of that curiosity of learning and wanting to not being afraid to try something new and figure it out. That was one of them. And then one of the first kind of like, oh gosh, what are we doing moments was in late 2016. We'd opened 3 stores in our first year of business. We went from 15 artists to 100 artists that we were working with. We were in 3 really great little shopping centers. Royals had won the World Series in 2015. Chiefs were still kind of the Chiefs, but they were making the playoffs with Alex Smith. And we got a call from Hallmark, and they were very curious what we were doing, how we were growing in the retail world with just local goods. It's something they tinkered with a little bit in the past. Hallmark was one of the first people to carry Charlie Hustle's Heart KC shirt in Kansas City, for example. So they were in touch with some local companies, but not 100 and not at the scale that we had done it in just 1 year. So they called us and said, hey, we want to work with you guys. We want to put all these great products that you've found, that you've sourced, and we want to put them in 13 area Hallmark stores across the metro. But we need you guys to start barcoding your items. What's a UPC number?
Oh yeah, I remember. But buying those koozies, it was just like a tag with the price on it.
Tag with a handwritten thing. We were keeping track of inventories. That was a big like, oh shoot, this is what retailers do. How do we figure that out? And that was our first big project where we had to invest in technology, software, train our employees how to do things the right way, start counting inventory. And that was like, okay, we're really into this retail world now. We no turning back.
Yeah. So talk about, I'd love the sponsorship idea in terms of Hallmark. Is that relationship still exist today in terms of their 13 stores, or is that no longer?
Yeah. It does not exist today. It lasted about 2.5 to 3 years. Really great learning experience for us. You learn best by doing. And so we learned from the best. One of the pieces of advice is that we were told early on, I'll never forget this, is if you wanted to survive in retail, you need to become a household name. You need to become top of mind. That is where people go when they need whatever it is you're offering, right? They can't go to your competitor. They've got to come to you. Well, the biggest household name in retail in Kansas City is Hallmark. You ask 10 out of 10 Kansas Cityans, have you heard of Hallmark? You're going to get 10 yeses. And so to be able to learn from them by being a supplier for them, by visiting their stores every week. I was delivering product to a new Hallmark store and talking to the managers and seeing how they displayed things and learning their best practices. 3 years into Made in KC, a real crash course finally in retail that we couldn't have gotten otherwise. we had a great partnership with that. We actually launched a pilot up in Chicago where we did Made in Chicago. We partnered with Chicago area artists, and we sourced 6 suburban Hallmark stores around the Chicago metro. They trusted us with this concept, like, hey, let's try this in Chicago, see if we can replicate this success in Kansas City. That really piqued our curiosity, where that's like, oh, if Hallmark sees some value in this in another market, maybe there's something in that for us. Ultimately, what happened with that partnership was one of our goals early on was to get a store on the Country Club Plaza. And so once we kind of got that store, it didn't make as much sense to supply these other smaller stores throughout the metro. And we kind of learned from Hallmark, hey, these are good neighborhoods to be in. This is a good footprint to follow. And so we kind of expanded more after that to where we have our footprint today. The relationship made less sense in that. And we weren't making a lot of money off that partnership, to be honest. The artists and makers who we were buying goods from were, but it was a consignment relationship. We only got a small margin there, but it was worth all of it for the experience, and 2, because it really allowed the Kansas City companies that we work with, the soap makers, the chocolatiers, the leather makers, to test their ability to scale up and make more products and actually make a living out of what they're doing, rather than it just being a hobby. Which ultimately has led to where we're at today with Made in KC. We have so many great suppliers who can now grow with us and supply goods to 15 stores and beyond. So it was a really great relationship. I can't understate that part of our journey, being able to learn from a bigger company that has kind of mastered retail in so many ways.
So good. So for the non-Kansas City listeners, the Plaza was built in 1926. I think the first outdoor shopping mall, and it's Spanish architecture. There's a lighting ceremony with millions of Christmas lights, holiday lights, the night of Thanksgiving. But so it's a premier destination for retail, especially for a Kansas City-based retailer to be in. Yeah. So Keith, what was that like to have a store at the Plaza?
Yeah. I mean, it's first shopping center, outdoor shopping center, and it was designed to accommodate the automobile, right? So it was the first shopping center where you could park your car right in front of your store, hop out, get what you want, drive to the next store if you wanted to. Also, the first shopping center, this is big in the commercial real estate world, the first shopping center to do percentage of sale leases. So where your lease is not based on just a flat fee, but based on the percentage of sales. They were the first to invent that concept and perfect that concept. And so they have this small, reputation in the retail world of being ahead of their time in a lot of different ways. Most people don't know the Plaza for those things, but they know it for the beautiful architecture. They know it for the great restaurants, centrally located in Kansas City. But for us to open a store there, we opened it in 2018, it was the goal. We kind of not felt like we made it, but we opened a flagship store called the Made in KC Marketplace, where we had over 250 vendors represented. We had a full coffee shop inside, a full bar, so you can have local Kansas City beer, wine, and cocktails. You can have local Kansas City coffee and fresh-made pastries, all in one great shopping experience. It was our full representation of what the Made in KC ideal should be, where you can eat, drink, and shop local in one spot, spend 5 minutes there, 25 minutes there, spend an hour there, just supporting local artists and makers, connecting with your community, and being a really robust platform for all these great Kansas City creatives that we work with.
Yeah. So I'm going to go back kind of the Hallmark discussion a little bit. In doing research for our conversation today, it looked like you have some ideas for like corporate partnerships, possibly not in the Hallmark mold, but maybe something else. There was one quote you had, I believe, like, Garmin's a big company in Kansas City. Have them, instead of buying, Folgers coffee or something like that, they should, buy a local coffee, like a Roastery or Messenger coffee supplied to their employees. Even though it costs more, but it's keeping more money in the community. So maybe it gets to your business model and the impact economically. So maybe talk through that.
Yeah, about 5 or 6 years ago, we hired a company to do an audit on our finances to make sure how much of our money that we spend is coming from a local Kansas City area supplier, vendor, landlord, etc. And at the time, we found that 94 cents of the dollar spent in our stores, today it's about 90 cents, stays in the local Kansas City economy, meaning it's going right back into the Kansas City economy. If you shop at Amazon, only about 1 penny of every dollar spent stays local. If you shop at a Target or Walmart, that number is only about 30 cents of every dollar stays local. If you shop at a local boutique that's locally owned by your friend, your neighbor, but they're selling non-local products, about 60 cents of your dollar stays local. So when we did that audit and we realized that that's a very high number, and that has a very profound impact as we've grown to multiple locations doing millions in revenue. Like that's a noticeable dollar. What if Made in KC was not just about retail, not just about these great shopping experience, not just about supporting local artists and makers, but what if it was more about a movement to get more people in your economy to support and shop local? We kind of, as you know, the global, local, national economies ebb and flow. One of the things that's real important in any sort of economy is the diversity of industry. Kansas City's got a pretty diverse industry. We've got some auto manufacturing, we've got tech, we've got medical, we've got animal health, we've got all these different things going on. What if we were also known as the best economy that supports itself, that supports the local, that we're less impacted by the ebbs and flows of the global economy or the national economy, because we're so supportive of each other locally that it actually notices, it actually moves the meter a little bit. And so we started talking about 90 cents on the dollar stays here. And we really think that as we pivot, as we continue to change and adapt our business, that one of the things that would be really meaningful is how can we get these larger corporations, the Hallmarks, the Oracles, the Cerners, the Garmins, there's so many great businesses here in Kansas City to make one pivot. Maybe that's with their office coffee. Maybe that's with their corporate gifts. Maybe that's with where they do their corporate retreats. Whatever the case may be, to a Kansas City-based company, the impact of that would be significant. You know, you're talking about, if you're a big office, a coffee supplier, you're talking about that coffee supplier buying another roasting machine, hiring another roaster, ordering more bags, ordering more beans, all that stuff. What if we were known as the city of fountains, great sports town, great barbecue town, but also a city that supports local better than any other town? And I do think that part of our success at Made in KC is because of that, is because we do understand the importance of that. There's not another metro in America that has as many local goods stores as we do in Kansas City. So there is a company called Made in DC. They've got 3 locations in DC and 2 in Arlington. They came out to visit us because they wanted to see how does Kansas City have more stores than we do. We've got more people, higher average income, all this great stuff. What's going on in Kansas City? Pittsburgh, Chicago, LA, we've all got little pockets, but there's 2 or 3 stores, 1 or 2 stores. There's not the robust footprint, because I think Kansas City is truly unique in ways that they understand what it means to support your neighbor, to look out for each other. If you don't support the local things, the things that make your city unique, they will go away. And your city will look like any other city. And I think Kansas City understands that.
By the time this episode airs, I think we're going to be right in the midst of the beginning of World Cup.
Yeah.
So talk about your preparation, your excitement, or your anxiety with that coming up in, I think it's 56 days from today.
56 days. Who's counting, right? Who's counting? We've been talking about this for 2-3 years every day in Kansas City. It's wonderful. It's a great opportunity to showcase all that we are in Kansas City, not in terms of just business stuff, but our personalities, our hospitality, our food, our that's not transportation, but our accessibility as a city. Again, Kansas City's unique. We're the only city that's going to host 6 games in this World Cup, more than LA, more than New York, more than Dallas. Like that's really saying something. We're the most accessible city for the World Cup, and so whether you're flying or driving, you can get to Kansas City pretty easily. So that's real exciting. So we are really looking forward to welcoming more folks, introducing them to all the great things that Kansas City's making, from our barbecue sauce to our chocolates to our candles to our great coffee to our great cocktails. The hope is, in the moment, we're going to show you a good time. You're going to have a good experience. You're going to maybe find something you didn't expect in our town. And in the long term, we want to make you come back, whether that's through ordering something else or coming back to visit because you just you want to get more, you didn't quite get to that next barbecue spot, you want to check out that other coffee shop, that other Made in KC store, because all of our stores are so different. And you just like the people. You just like being here. That's my hope after all this is said and done.
Yeah. Well, I love you paraphrased a quote from a British author and theologian. We do not love Kansas City because it is great. Kansas City is great because we love it. So, well Keith, said. Thank you so much for being on the podcast. It was great to share your story, and I really enjoyed the conversation. Thank you.
Likewise, Jeff. Thank you very much. I really appreciate it, and thanks for all you do for Kansas City as well.
I love Keith's story. It's 3 founders who had basically zero retail experience. They had this, we'll call it one tiny vestibule, like upstairs at Prairie Fire. It's a local kind of mall, outdoor mall, shops and retail and
entertainment,
bars. They
got bowling, they got a movie theater, they got everything there.
Yeah, restaurants, and with their belief that Kansas City business owners deserve a real stage, and 11 years later, Made in KC is not just a store; it's almost like a love letter to local business.
Yeah.
And, he's become such a Kansas City fan. He was a Southern California kid with a skateboard, and I don't think he surfed, but after parents got divorced, moved from Southern California to Boonville, Missouri. Hello. But, he kind of paraphrased that. I think it was G.K. Chesterton, the famous English playwright, author, quote about Rome. His quote about Kansas City is, "We do not love Kansas City because it is great. KC is great because we love it." So I thought that was just, I really love that about him. And then, and then talk about the 3 founders. One worked at a restaurant for a couple of weeks. One maybe worked at a retail store for a month. I don't know. And they have zero experience, but it reminded me a lot of, Christina and Matt Loftus, who are 2 of the 3 co-founders of Robach. They said their ignorance and their lack of experience in clothing and, retail, although they didn't do retail till later, but was their superpower. Because they didn't care what questions they asked. They thought of new ideas that maybe if you had 10 years experience in retail, you wouldn't be asking. And I really felt it was the same for him and his founders. They weren't trapped by how retail is supposed to work, so they built it around the makers, the creators, the artists first. So I thought that was really fantastic. And then partnering with a $4 billion company or whatever Hallmark is or was at the time, and not knowing, talk about, ignorance is a superpower, not knowing what a UPC number is. Yeah, and the other thing, I think I talked about it in the episode, because Robin knew about the place, my wife, and we went upstairs when we shopped. We bought some beer koozies, and they literally had little tags, with the string and with the price on it, with handwritten in a pen, $10.
Listen, just like Hobby Lobby. If you ever shop in Hobby Lobby, they still don't have UPC codes.
Interesting.
In Hobby Lobby. Yeah, they do the exact same thing.
Yeah. What'd you get out of the episode, Joe?
I love this. I loved the story. I loved him. I loved everything about him. QuickBook for Dummies I thought was funny, but it just it just shows how he is so transparent and so out there. And if that's a superpower, then that's great. And I especially love the fact that he was talking about putting the artist first. I'm somewhat of an artist, somewhat of a musician, and so I kind of feel like I've got things that I want to put out there. The concept of putting the artist first, or what he's calling an artist, we might call a maker or the manufacturer, or
a business owner,
something, whatever it was that he was selling. Yeah. But the concept of that is that he knows who his customer is. He knows who to make happy. And a lot of times in business, a lot of people that are in business don't know who their customer is. Especially if your business goes out in several different directions and you've got several different channels. that you sell some wholesale and some retail and some manufacturing and some OEM and all sorts of things like that, it's very easy to forget who your customer is. And the problem is a lot of times that people that don't know who their customer is don't know that they don't know who their customer is. That is, they think they know who it is, but if you did a deep dive into it, you'd realize that they were wrong. And I think that's a failure a lot of times in business. A lot of times when you study businesses that are failing, or at least not up to expectations, it's because they've forgotten who they're supposed to serve, right? And a lot of times, and we've seen this in the corporate couch, a lot of times your real customer is your employees, is your associates. A lot of companies have this policy that every night our greatest asset walks out these doors and into the parking lot and drive home. And you've got to know that if they are the most important thing that's running your business, you need to know that, and you need to acknowledge that, and you need to act as if that's true. In Keith's world, he understood that his most important people in his business are the artists. You keep the artist happy first, and then you can go from there. That's something else, and I think, did I remember this right, that he said he doesn't sell things on consignment. That is, he actually buys them from the artist and then resells them.
Yeah, I think that's right.
Isn't that right? So what does that mean? He's accepting all the risk. He's accepting all the risk, and that would be so refreshing in the artist world, because most artists' work is sold on commission or on consignment. That is, you don't get any money until the thing actually sells, which puts the risk on the artist, and he's doing it the other way. It was a great interview. I absolutely loved it.
Yeah, and it's one thing to say, support local, but he's using local as an economic strategy, not just a nice slogan. So 90 cents on the dollar coming out of the Made in KC stores or online stays local, compared to if you order something off Amazon, 1 cent of the dollar stays local. So
maybe the last mile does, maybe the last delivery guy does, but that's about it.
It's basically the driver.
Yeah.
I think he said.
Yeah. No, that was great. Loved it.
Yeah. Joe, we've been on vacation, and what else is going on in your life since we haven't chatted?
I tell you, I have been bugged a lot lately. It really, really bothers me. There are some people that don't know the difference between entomology and etymology, and that bugs me in ways that I just can't put into words.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of The Corporate Couch. If you enjoy the podcast, I would love for you to take 2 minutes out of your day to rate us 5 stars and write a review. Please join me next week to learn from another great leader sharing their professional journey and insights.